Marissa sat at the corner table of her favorite cafe, stirring her tea with a trembling hand. Only yesterday, her husband, Daniel, had told her that he would be leaving their home. Not for a new job or adventure, but to dedicate his life entirely to a divine mission. He spoke of service, of helping those in the most desperate corners of the world, and of living a life aligned with a purpose far greater than their own. At first, Marissa tried to understand. She nodded, even smiled, and whispered words of encouragement. But when Daniel's suitcase was tucked into the back of a taxi, she felt an emptiness that no amount of spiritual reasoning could fill. Their home, once full of laughter and quiet warmth, now seemed too large, too silent. She kept imagining their shared mornings, the way he would hold her hand as they walked the dog, the late-night talks that never seemed to end. All of it felt like it had been swallowed by a shadow. She had come to the cafe on a whim, hoping that the smell of coffee and the soft murmur of conversations would distract her. The barista nodded at her in recognition, the same way he always did. But today, she barely registered his greeting. Her mind replayed Daniel's words over and over. Marissa, this is what I'm meant to do. I have to follow this path. She had asked herself repeatedly if she had done something wrong, if she had failed him in some way. Lost in her thoughts, she barely noticed the young waiter who approached her table. He was different from the usual staff, more observant, his eyes carrying a warmth that somehow cut through her gloom. Rough day? He asked softly, placing a fresh cup of tea before her. His voice wasn't intrusive. It was gentle, like a hand reaching out in the dark. Marissa looked up, startled. She hadn't realized she had been holding back tears, but the waiter's gaze seemed to invite honesty without judgment. She shook her head, but the corners of her mouth betrayed her, twitching in a faint, sad smile. It's complicated, she admitted. The waiter nodded knowingly, as if he had heard such stories 1,000 times. He pulled up a chair beside her, which made her frown. Initially, she wasn't used to strangers crossing that line, but something in his demeanor told her she could trust him. Sometimes, he began carefully, we love people so much that when they choose a path we don't understand, it feels like rejection. But maybe it's not about losing them. It's about learning to grow in the space they leave behind. Marissa frowned, puzzled. Learn to grow. Yes, he said with a small smile. Life doesn't stop because someone leaves. In fact, it gives you a chance to see what you're made of, what you've ignored while focusing on their dreams, what passions you've shelved, what strength you didn't know you had. You get to discover your own mission. She blinked, staring into the steaming cup of tea, tasting the words slowly as if they were a medicine. It was simple advice, almost too simple, but somehow it felt like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning. She realized she had been sitting in despair, letting her identity shrink to to the shadow of her husband's choices. The waiter smiled again, sensing her contemplation. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the ones we love the most are meant to inspire us in ways we never expected. Maybe his mission is not to take him away from you, but to show you that you're capable of finding your own." For the first time in 24 hours, Marissa's chest felt lighter. She didn't have answers yet, and her heart still ached, but a spark of possibility ignited within her. Maybe she didn't have to wait for Daniel to return to reclaim her life. Maybe she could start building it herself. Over the next few weeks, Marissa began to see the world differently. The cafe became her sanctuary, not just for the tea, but for the quiet wisdom of the young waiter, whose words lingered in her mind like a gentle refrain. She started taking long walks, exploring art galleries she had never visited, and even enrolled in a course on social works, something she had once considered but had always put aside for the sake of comfort and routine. At first, it was awkward. She felt guilty, as if enjoying herself was a betrayal to Daniel's mission. But every time she caught herself hesitating, she remembered the waiter's words, "You get to discover your own mission." Slowly, she realized that choosing to live fully did not mean she loved him any less. It meant she was honoring herself. One rainy afternoon, she returned to the cafe after volunteering at a shelter for underprivileged children. She felt a satisfaction she hadn't known in years. Sitting down with her tea, she noticed the waiter watching her with a quiet pride. "You seem different today," he said. "Happier, maybe." Marissa smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I think I'm finally starting to understand what you meant," she admitted. "About growth, about finding purpose. I've been living in his shadow for so long, I forgot I had my own path." The waiter nodded, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "It's amazing what happens when you stop waiting for someone else to define your life," he said. "The moment you take ownership of your own story, the world suddenly becomes full of possibilities." She laughed softly, a sound that had been absent from her life for months. For the first time, she didn't feel heartbroken. She felt alive. She realized that Daniel's choice had forced her to confront her own potential. His absence had been a gift wrapped in the most painful of wrappings. Months later, she received a letter from Daniel. He spoke of his experiences, the lives he had touched, and how he missed her every day. But instead of feeling the old sorrow, Marissa read the words with a calm heart. She had built a life she loved, one full of purpose and joy. And now she could choose to share it with him, or continue it on her own terms. Sitting in the cafe once more, sipping her tea, the waiter approached with a knowing smile, and she finally said, "Thank you. I think I just found my mission too." And for the first time in months, she truly believed it.